me know when.
You're on.
Okay, so here we are in the Santa Clara neighborhood in Eugene, a suburban neighborhood in North Eugene, on an e-web easement. That's the Eugene Water and Electrical Board easement. And it stretches from the road out there all the way in past me to the well, it actually goes to the telephone pole way in the back. But what's important to note is that if you look at those blackberries right there, is that this whole easement basically looked like that until 2 years ago when Jim, the gentleman holding the phone, decided to get in here and cut it all down in the hope of creating something in the way of a community garden of sorts. We still don't have water here, for city water, but it's still a rather, presents us with a very remarkable opportunity to do some interesting research into dry farming. We're very influenced, of course, by the work of Amy Garrett at OSU, who's helping us out with this particular project here. So basically what happened is that after Jim had got the blackberries cut down, he mulched heavily with cardboard and grass clippings and leaves. Left it for a year. When he saw that the blackberries weren't coming up, he then came in, you can see these beds, I'm sitting in one of these beds now, he then came in, laid down a layer of composted horse manure and grass clippings. He then put down on top of that a layer of non-composted cedar sawdust and horse manure from the Jasper Mountain Center. So essentially what we have as a sandwich here was originally soil in which blackberries were growing and suppressed with the cardboard and the grass clippings. Then the compost came in top, and then on top of that we have this layer of what essentially looks very much like sawdust that has horse manure in it. Now this is cedar. Apparently cedar is preferred in horse stables. Horses prefer cedar to any other type of sawdust for, I think it's the way it sort of affects its feet. When Jim told me that this plot might be available to grow in, I was very excited because I thought here's an opportunity to try and experiment in dry farming using a technique and an approach that would be incredibly applicable and readily accessible in our bioregion. You can generally get hold of horse manure very easily. You can generally get hold of shavings and so on and so forth from stables very easily. You can generally find that there's a blackberry patch that you need to get into, for example. So potentially it's something that we could copy. Now where things get interesting here is that if you have a look over here, you can see this very thick black plastic tarp that Jim put down. And essentially what he did, if you come back to me, Jim, is that he put this tarp on this plot here last spring. So this plot didn't see any winter rain at all over the course of the last little while. It's seen no moisture come into it for over a year, and we're now beginning to plant into it. So let's see what happens when we actually part this and see what's underneath. And I've already planted the row over there and the row up to this point, and these are potatoes that Amy Garrett at OSU has provided us with. And what I'm essentially doing is parting the sawdust until I get down to a layer of essentially the composted material. And if you can see, I can just stick my hand into that. Isn't that beautiful? And when I pull it out, you can see that's gorgeously moist, okay? Yeah, smells pretty good too. And this is essentially what we're wanting to do, is put our potato in there. I'm actually planting it just below the surface of the soil, tucking it in a little bit, and then gently moving the sawdust in on top, and then repeating the process here. down to where I start hitting the composted material, digging in, putting the potato in, filling in lightly with sawdust. I was doing a little bit of thinking about how far we would put stuff down. I'll talk about that, or write about that, maybe at a different point. But essentially at some juncture we had to sort of wing it. And I couldn't get hold of Amy on the telephone just now, so decided to go this way. Again, planting it just below the surface of the soil, patting it in, and then moving in the sawdust on top. We're on basically foot spacing in rows 2 feet apart, 3 feet between the path. And we basically decided to go that way because we decided to go that way. We had to make a decision and we wanted to stick with a basic sameness all the way through. So that's essentially what we're doing. So again, we've got, I don't know, I think we might have 4 or 5 varieties of potatoes from Amy that we're going to be planting today. It's now May, what's the date? The 10th or 9th?
13th.
The 13th or so.
Friday.
And we'll basically keep this project sort of updated on video as we go along. At this juncture, we're thinking that we might try mulching with sawdust and hay, straw, to see how it goes. But again, we'll go with what we've got. There's one more aspect to this project that's quite interesting. No farm, no garden, is an island. Jim is motivated in terms of his concern for converting this plot into a community garden, and his desire and willingness to be involved in this project by his faith. He's a key figure at an apostolic Pentecostal church in town, which has a well-deserved reputation for being one of the most far-out Pentecostal churches in our bioregion. And his involvement in a project like this is a classic example of how we're seeing deep, fundamentally Christian sentiment move towards an engagement that involves a reverential, responsible and visionary engagement with creation and its reverential stewardship. And let's hope there are many more instances where good and devout Christian folk feel that they can engage fully with the scientific community in this way and make and the scientific community can fall back on their support for important research that really needs to get done. Okay, I think that's it.